those who were involved in making it come to life. Join us as we go behind the door.
Hi there. Thanks for coming into another episode of Behind the Door. My name is Brian Black. I am one of the creators of The Grey Rooms, along with Jason Wilson. We'll be having a wonderful conversation with Jennifer Roszell. So thank you, everybody. Jennifer, hello.
Hello.
And hello, Michael. How are you?
Awesome. Thanks for having me again.
Oh, I know. I haven't talked to you since last year. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, true. Last decade.
Yeah, the last decade. Look at that. Just going back in time. Michael Rigg was in the last Behind the Door, but we did make that joke that we were going to pull this on him since he's in the next episode. So, Michael, it has to be an interesting experience, right? I mean, you're a voice actor for one, and the writer for the next. Has it been a really good experience for you?
Yeah, it's been amazing. It's fantastic. I don't know what I liked better. I enjoyed listening to both stories immensely, but yeah, this has been great.
All right, Michael, thank you. And Jennifer, you've been having a very exciting holiday season. I think you're probably looking forward to a new year, right?
I am so happy to be here talking on the phone and not dealing with contractors. So for those of you listening at home, I had a flood in my house, and it's from a water heater that burst on our third floor. So lesson one, don't have a water heater on your third floor, and don't have a big one on your third floor. And I find it interesting that there was a flood in my home when it's a story about the Titanic and lots of water. So let's just think on that.
Man, it just, at least this wasn't a shark story.
Yeah,
exactly. And at least my house didn't hit an iceberg. So, that's all good.
Yes, and that is true. I mean, when you live, especially when you live in the Northeast, you can potentially have some snow and ice. So
it's so true. It's so true.
Man, I'll tell you, this is a great story, guys. Jennifer, you did a wonderful job.
Oh, thank you. It's a wonderful story. Michael, you wrote a great one, full of suspense. And
thank you.
I just never, reading it, I just never knew where it was going next. And I love the different realities and the way reality shifts, and you never know what's real and what's not. And I thought that was wonderful.
Thank you.
It's true. I thought this was a true story.
I mean, there's so much reality in it as well. It's so it's like plucked from the headlines of the Titanic, but it's really really suspenseful. And
this is where Michael was going to tell us that this is the story of like his grandparents or something, like this horrible story.
Not quite. The background of the story is actually a little more Grey Roomsy.
Oh,
to be honest, yeah. And when I started writing it, I was thinking about Behind the Door, like a long time ago when I started writing it. I'm like, oh, if this story gets chosen and it's done, there's going to be a Behind the Door, and I'm going to be on it, and I'm going to have to tell the story.
Oh, now I can't wait.
Yeah. I'm scared now.
I've got chills. Tell us.
You're scared, so am I. Well, first of all, regarding the theme of the horribly failed romance turned into a murder, every Titanic story has been a romance, going back to the Barbara Stanwyck and then, of course, James Cameron. It's like turning this horrific tragedy from 1912 into, stuff of romantic fantasy. And there's also, the terror of the event itself. But I wanted to take it a step in completely the opposite direction and actually throw in an attempted murder or a murder gone wrong that could very well have happened, because you wouldn't know, because the ship sank and over 1,000 people died, victim and killer included. as for the Titanic and how well, as you said,
It's okay, Michael.
Go
I
ahead,
do it too.
toot your own horn. We love it.
No. It's not really horn tooting. If I am accidentally disconnected, we'll know why. When I was about 8 years old, it was summertime. I was going to go outside and play with my friends. We were going to play baseball. There's a sand lot nearby. It was the 70s, and things were, it was good to be outside until the street lights came on and you had to come back in. And it was a time of my life when that was what I did. And ran in the house to grab my mitt. As I'm running back out, my dad, who was working shift work, was sleepily watching a black and white movie in his recliner. And I saw a ship, and it was the Titanic. And it wasn't sinking or anything. It was just sailing at that time. But I stopped dead in my tracks, and I asked my dad, "What is that?" And he said, "It's the Titanic." And it was Titanic with Barbara Stanwyck, and I forget who else was in it. It was a 1930s movie about the sinking and a romance. And I was fixated. And from that moment on, I would have recurring dreams. And the dreams were always had associated with them the strong smell of wet paint. And as time went on, I got older, I started to obsess about the Titanic. And then I started reading into how the ship was new and how a lot of the passengers complained about the smell of wet paint.
Ah.
And it was freaky to me. And it's like, as I would see photographs and whatnot, I would actually be able to tell what color the black and white photos were, if it would show a room or a lounge or something. It's like I felt like I knew what it would look like in color.
That's so eerie.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was definitely eerie. But it's when I set out to write the story, I could not get the Titanic. It's like the story had to be. I had to utilize it in some way, and everything just seemed to fit so well together. It took no time at all to write once it started going, and I don't necessarily subscribe to, being, reincarnated or anything like that. I can't explain why I had those feelings, why I had those dreams, even as a kid. But if you believe that, then maybe I'm evidence.
Maybe something reached out to you.
Really, really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Could be that too. Maybe, spirits drift through the world, and that one whizzed through me as I was.
Right.
See, now when I listen to that song, My Heart Will Go On, I'll always think of Michael J. Rigg.
Oh, please don't.
Your heart is forever a part of the Titanic. That is definitely honestly, I like to read that story too.
Mm.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd like to read that story too. Okay, you have a new writing assignment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on, Rigg. We want to see this autobiography, Stephen King style horror story.
Yeah, maybe I will. I mean, I've got a lot of, a lot comes to mind when I sit and think about it for a while. So I was saying before we started recording, I listened to the story 3 or 4 times over, and every time I come to tears at the end, because the audio is so it's weird, because I automatically want to say it's reminiscent, or it's like it makes me remember when I was there, and I was not there. I don't know how I feel that way or why, but yeah, there's the freaky truth of it. But yeah, Jason, if there is a very old spirit in me who was there, kudos, because you pretty much nailed it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I got to tell you, it's kind of weird sometimes when I'm doing these stories. It's kind of similar, like the sounds pop into my head, and it's kind of how I hear things. So I'm glad you enjoyed it, man. That's the most important part.
So, Mike, when you were creating the story and you were working on the main character, how did you originally visualize her that kind of, compelled her to act the way she did in the story?
Well, a lot of that comes from the era. There's a few times in the story where it refers to how, women cannot be in business, women can't inherit, women can't have money, women can't be in charge, women can't have jobs. Um, and this wasn't necessarily one of those stories where it turns out that the female lead is actually strong and like takes charge. When you listen to it, she actually says at one point she had to consult her husband about the inheritance because she didn't know what it meant, or what. So he was still in charge, and even up to the end, she was desperately hanging on to having him there, even when she learns of his betrayal and when he said that he had taken the liberty of calling the lawyer or contacting the lawyer to try to get the will changed. She didn't. She responded more about the current situation that they were in, with only a slight bit of raised curiosity there, and it was that triggered him. But she wasn't like aggressive about it or confrontational about it at all. It seemed like it would be the natural thing for a man to do because men were the ones who led business back then.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
it is
back.
interesting. She does say about my inheritance.
Exactly.
It's but quickly she does acquiesce to his will. It's true.
Mm-hmm.
One of my things was how she was like, "This is how my story became grim," or something like that, and I was like, "Man, all right, if I got murdered by my husband, it'd be a little more than grim." But I can also see how, she was in love with the idea of what he represented in the beginning, so I could kind of, see why she still, I guess, loves that who she married. She doesn't love what happened because of everything else.
Yeah, and she even takes the fact that he, hangs out with the guys and drinks and smells like cigars. That's like a natural thing for men to be who are.
Yeah, that's what men did. Yes.
Yeah.
Wondrous aromas. Gross.
Yep.
Actually, guess what? And I know Jennifer said she hasn't listened to it yet, which
I haven't heard it.
I look forward to when you do listen to it because you're supporting your supporting actor, Alistair Mackey. The way that you two worked together in that story, it was very fluid and very natural. It sounded real, and so
Wow. Well, I give all the credit to my partner.
yeah, you got you both today. Very wonderful.
Who I have not met.
Yeah, he's
that's
over
wonderful.
in
I can't wait to
Scotland.
hear it.
Yeah, he's over in Scotland. He's a wonderful guy, and he also plays the character Todd in our main story. So he's done a lot for us.
Yeah,
this season.
he is awesome. Yeah, and I'll second that too. I mean, Jennifer and Alistair together. One part in particular when he comes drunkenly into the room, the cabin, to bring her up on deck, and when he's like trying to get her to come out, and then there's that pause, where the way he says "please" is like so dark, and yet also at the same time you could see it from her perspective of, my husband is attempting to be apologetic and he's being suave, and how could I resist? But that darkness was there. It was just awesome the way both of you did that.
Oh, that's exciting.
So Jen, we've been, talking about how what Michael Rigg's, previous life has brought to the story, but kind of talking about you for once. Did you ever do like a horror podcast before, or do read any kind of horror stories?
No, I'm a horror virgin, so this was very exciting. It's not really. I tend to be more on the light side of things, so it was really quite fun for me to go into a darker realm with this story. And I've just found it. I found it very scary and evocative, and so I was thrilled to be a part.
Nice.
Uh-oh.
We'll need to put her in something where she gets to murder a bunch of people.
Right.
next, you
I
know?
was gonna say we're building a scream queen here, guys.
So yeah, you did a great, you did a fantastic job. But I guess the one thing is, being that what happened to your character, have you ever been on boats? Like, do you like cruises? Do you like?
I have been on one cruise, and many years ago, I used to be on a soap opera, and many years ago, I got to go on this cruise with some people had won on a TV station had won a contest where they got to go on a cruise with some actors on soaps, and so I got to be one of those actors on that they got to go on the cruise with, and so it was very fun. I took my best friend with me, and we went to Mexico, and it was it was really fun. So that was my cruise. It was a Carnival Cruise Line, as I remember, and I really enjoyed it. But I do like sailing. I have some friends with sailboats, and I love going out sailing.
You think you'll ever think of this story now?
I will. Well, I don't think I want to go on a cruise ship ever again. So definitely not. Definitely not.
Oh, that Graham. See, he ruined her hopes and dreams. No.
Yeah, that's really cool that you were in soap. So that's pretty neat, man. That's awesome.
Well, and it's a kind of a dying art, really. It's all the soaps are gone from New York City. There are soaps left, but they're in Los Angeles, and it's there are fewer of them now than there used to be. There's so much choice in television that they can't command the audience that they used to. They still command audience, but it's quite different these days. But I digress. Michael,
cool,
I'm also just thrilled with the suspense that you created with this story and the different levels of reality, and I'm curious how you sustained all of that, sort of the mystery. Like, what have you had experiences like that yourself, where people morphed into different people?
No. But as I was, plotting out, I mean, the base of the story is an evil person dies, and they have a chance to redeem themselves by saving the person that they intended to kill. And as I was writing it, I'm thinking, how would this manifest? Is it a trick? I wanted it to play where you can either see it as a trick of her mind because of all the terror going on around her, or maybe her husband really is there in some sort of ghost form that only she can see. But since he had tried to kill her before in life, now in death, he may, as far as she knows, he is attempting to continue to lure her to the other side.
Exactly. So it was very cool, and I just love the different levels of reality, because you never know if like you said, if it's her mind playing a trick on her, if it's an apparition, or if it's really him. And I just thought you did that very, very well in the writing.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, and I purposely, of course, I knew going into it was going to take place on the Titanic, but I went to great lengths to keep major description out. The name of the ship was never mentioned. In fact, the Titanic had a couple of stops before it crossed the Atlantic, and rather than leaving out of Southampton or mentioning Liverpool or anything like that, I took the stop that it made in France, and and also the inheritance, the money that was amassed, came from the neon light business. And neon was around back in 1912. A lot of people don't know that. But I use that because I think it's something people associate more with, like, the 50s.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I wanted to keep people guessing until the word iceberg was mentioned. And then it was like, oh, crap.
You did that really well, because there are hints, but you don't know for sure until that moment. Yeah. Yeah.
One
That's
thing
really
I
cool.
had a question about was, she never did tell anybody about what happened. She never said her husband tried to kill her. She never said she
Right.
killed her husband. She just kind of went to bed, kind of weepy, and that was it. Like, she just kind of pretended this whole event never happened, but was either dealing with like, she was having, PTSD, or she was seeing a ghost. So how come she never said anything? Like, she could have had more allies or somebody, some more help in that situation.
Right. Well, I think that plays again to the time period and the expectations and the presumptions that people would have made. And on top of that, the fact that she was basically in shock from it. And the one line about, the ship is stopped, and at this time they think it's just a problem with the propeller. The ship is parking on my husband's grave. It's like this, she's just overwhelmed with the shock, and she's only thinking about who's going to take care of her now. I mean, yeah, she's the one who's getting the inheritance, but she can't do anything without her husband, and he tried to kill her. And it's all of these things are piling on her at the same time. And it just so happens that history takes over and just adds to that. So she didn't really get a lot of chance or opportunity. I think I actually did in the original draft. I actually had her talking out the possibility of getting an officer to help her. But the more I did it, the more it seemed like it wasn't right for the time and the character.
It's so perfect, because if her husband had tried to kill her, it would have been the perfect crime, because the Titanic sank and no one would have known. Of course, he would die too. But it's really such an interesting idea for a big crime or a murder to have happened, and no one would ever know.
Yeah, I really liked at the end there that it didn't come right out and say something happened, but it was definitely implied. So I really kind of left your imagination to run wild a little bit there, which I really liked that.
Yeah, me too. I like that.
Next time you watch James Cameron's Titanic movie, you just know there's a little backstory that isn't seen. Michael Riggs.
Yep. Don't get me started. I liked it. I mean, for me, it was exciting seeing the ship realized in all of its digital splendor. But I'm sorry, but it was just way too bright. I mean, we're talking. It was the middle of the Atlantic, the middle of the night, and there was no moon. It was dark, and the movie just smells of movie lights.
Yeah, but the guy who fell and bounced off the propeller blade. That was awesome. You have to give that. I mean, just his form alone was an 8.5.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
His landing may have needed some work, but the fall, the spin, and then he went into what I refer to as an oh shit. And just flipping head over end, bang bang boom, and then he just nailed it. It was
and a nice little dong in there in the sound. But I got to give Cameron credit for one thing, as far as the facts of the disaster. He hit every major point. The only thing there were two of the Titanic senior officers, Fifth Officer Lowe and First Officer Murdoch. He kind of blended those two together. Yeah, I'm sounding like a Titanic nerd, which I am, but I think
it's an amazing thing. I think I have it on VR. You can go down and check it on the virtual reality. It's pretty neat.
Oh, yeah. Every April 14th, I actually watch that production. I forget the guys' names, but the ones who are recreating the sinking in 3D or virtual reality.
Oh, wow.
And they every April 14th, they actually re-release it on YouTube, and it plays in actual time from 11:40 p.m. to 2:20 a.m.
You might be interested in this as well. My neighbor, his father helped discover is an underwater explorer a la Jacques Cousteau, and helped discover the Titanic.
Ooh.
Underwater.
That is cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and got to go down and see it. Yeah. So.
Oh. Now that scares me right there, because it makes me think of movies like 47 meters down and stuff. You know what? I'll just take a bath. That's about all I'm going to do.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I have no interest in going down there, but I admire the people brave enough to do so. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. I can't even swim. So
what?
I can't swim. I'd be one of those guys that went dong and hit that propeller blade.
Well, apparently neither could I in a past life.
No,
Get Brian some arm floaties for Christmas.
Well, my sister thought it'd be funny I don't know if she thought it'd be funny to try to drown me, but that was essentially what she was doing. She kept dunking my head underwater. And yeah, when I was a little kid, it just freaked me out. So I can walk in water. I'm like, 6'2", so I don't generally, I can go in swimming pools and stuff, but like if I'm in the ocean, I don't go too far out because I cannot swim. And if I would get picked up and start, getting drawn into the ocean, yeah, I'd be dead. So
Okay, that's terrible.
So who wants to write that story? Who hates me?
I was just thinking that. I was like, man, that's a story. But with the curses, we probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah, I already had 2 strokes. I don't need to freaking.
No.
Oh, geez.
Jennifer there, her delivery, I got to tell you, I think that needs to be said. Anybody who actually has had the opportunity to listen to it could really appreciate just your delivery was just perfect. I mean,
you're so kind.
I'm the child of an adopted English immigrant, and my grandmother, who lived over here before she passed away, was from England. And when we ever went over to her house, she would force hot tea with honey down me, and she'd sit there and tell me about, my family back in England and everything. And then when we lived there for a few years, you really hit that very authentic sounding English accent. It was very proper too, because there's different kinds of accents for the different regions in that part of the country, and I really appreciated the quality that I got to work with on that. So it was a real pleasure of mine to get to listen to what you did. It was a real treat. I really appreciated your professionalism and your talent. So thank you.
That is really, really kind. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to be my self-esteem coach? Come on. No, that's really kind.
I was going to, as I was going around bragging about it, I was telling everybody how thrilled I was because they actually got this awesome English actress to play this part. Honestly, it was perfect.
You're very kind. Thank you. I am drawn to things of England and to British people and to those sounds. And don't get me started on Downton Abbey because, that is also one of the events that starts the entire plot and romance of Downton Abbey is the Titanic.
Ooh.
Because the air was lost in the Titanic. What's that?
So you just spoiled it.
Oh, what?
Oh, no.
No, I'm just kidding.
No.
I was just saying.
That's what starts the plot of Downton Abbey. You've watched Downton Abbey. Come on, you have.
No, I haven't.
Come on, Brian. Yes, you have.
My mom has. I haven't.
Well, it starts the plot. That's the whole thing. Is that the heir to Downton Abbey it dies in the Titanic, and there is no heir because the heirs are women and they cannot inherit. Yep. So, what's that?
Oh, wow.
I just said. That's what I'm talking about.
And then, and the first male heir they find is a cousin, and he doesn't really want it. So that's what starts it all out. And I went to graduate school at Harvard. Okay, now it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn. It was acting. It wasn't for my brains. But I remember walking into the library there, the Wyden, was it Henry Elkins Widener Library, and it's a very grand marble thing. If you've been there, you may have seen it. It's but on the wall is a big. It's carved into the marble on the wall. It says this. Was something I can't remember the quote, but this library is given to the memory of our son Henry Elkins Widener, who perished in the foundering of the steamship Titanic.
So,
gosh,
yeah, that's
wow. It was almost like it's almost like all signs are pointing you to have to do this story.
I think so.
One day,
my burst water heater. Yes.
Yeah. Speaking of freezing, as I was listening to what I wrote for the second or third time, I came up with a drinking game. Anytime there's a reference to how cold it is, take a drink.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Or you can have every time you hear Graham Rowett.
Oh yeah.
He's like in that like 100 times.
You know
Well,
what?
you know, and I was disappointed when we were reading it because when I was preparing, I had assumed that I'd be reading the other characters too, you know, like an audiobook. And
Oh.
I was like, oh, you mean I don't get to do? I had a really good voice for the little couple. I was all disappointed. I was like, I wanted to do that guy. I had a really good voice for my husband. I really, you know, so I was disappointed that it wasn't all me. So
Well, you still
wait till
got
you
to
hear
be
it,
the
though.
old lady.
I did.
That
I got
was
to be the
nice.
old lady. He threw me a bone. Yeah.
Yeah, well, speaking of which, it's kind of funny. Brian was like, "Oh yeah, Graham's all over that," and I said, "Yeah, I got a little part in there too." It wasn't until I listened back to it that I realized, "Oh yeah, that's right. I recorded a little part in here."
I still.
I handed you your life vest when you came to the surface.
Oh, thanks.
Oh,
Oh,
see,
thanks.
I listened to that 2 times. And I was like, I still don't hear him. Like, you did a good job. I couldn't even tell. I thought it was Graham.
No,
yeah, that's new. You were so good. I thought you were Graham. That's-
Yeah.
There you go. Grandma loved that.
Yeah. So the question I asked that you couldn't hear because I guess my internet dropped, Jen, was, you know, we were kind of talking about how, you know, you love, you know, English characters, you love,
Mhm,
you know, that
mhm.
whole language. So when you actually have that part, how do you go about deciding the right, you know, language, like the right voice to sort of adopt for those characters?
You know, I guess I'm a pretty intuitive actor, you know, and so I guess just, you know, taking cues from the text about, you know, her upbringing and where she lived and kind of her milieu. And then frankly, for this one, to get into the mood, I watched Sense and Sensibility, which is one of my favorite movies. So you know, the Emma Thompson adaptation and with Kate Winslet again, harkening back to the Titanic. I did not watch the Titanic, but yeah. So I went back to an old favorite, Touchstone, and used those ladies as my models for this.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Um,
And we couldn't even tell. We thought you were those people.
Yeah.
That's what was amazing. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
So what do you think if you had survived this? What do you think your character would do in America?
Wow, that's such a great question. So if I had survived, okay, if my husband had tried to kill me, and I'd been through the horrible ordeal of living through the Titanic and surviving, and then probably having survivor's guilt and all these things. But if I think that would forge one in steel, really. I think so. I think she would come out of this thinking she can't trust men. And so I think that I think she would grow really strong and steely, frankly, having been through that. And I think that America being the new land, I think she would settle and stay in America and create a new life for herself with her inheritance and insist on holding the reins herself because it's the new land. So I think she would become kind of a Shavian heroine and strike out and really be her own mistress and um, and be the mistress of her own fortune and her own life at that point. I don't see her falling in love again. I see her having had her one love and that's it, and perhaps creating a life where she gives to charity um, or becomes a really successful businesswoman with her inheritance.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you 100% there. Had the character survived, she would have altered history, I feel.
Yeah, I think so
Wow.
too. I think she would have really grabbed. I mean, because I think once you live through a traumatic event like that,
Mhm.
it really gives you strength to accomplish things.
Yeah. And I think too, like when you have, you know, Alistair doing the things he did as a husband, I probably would push him off too, and and be the queen of the American society after that. Just take it over.
It's just interesting. One of the things that's really cool about the story as well, and the delivery combined with that, is that you do get kind of a history lesson. You do get the opportunity to, put the lens, put the goggles on, and jump in the Wayback Machine, and get a little glimpse of just how just weird society was. Just it was amazing to me, actually. I wasn't. I know that things have changed over the years, obviously, but I didn't realize that not so long ago, women didn't do that kind of stuff, and it kind of
They
took
couldn't
me
even
aback.
vote.
Yeah, it's just like wow, man, wow, geez,
Yeah.
what a
Yeah.
Right. And while in first class, and it's been depicted in various Titanic movies and whatnot, women there were treated with respect through who they were married to. And you always hear, that's the other thing about the story, you always hear about the first class and the third class, the people who didn't make it up in time for the boats, and the from all around the world, and Irish and all of them, and the crew from down below who weren't allowed up onto the boat deck until almost all the boats were gone. You never hear about second class. And a lot of my the dreams, I guess, that I'd had involved small cramped rooms, and I had always thought it would have had to have been third class. But as I did more research on the ship, found out that the accommodations for second class wasn't all that much better than third class. And first class was a huge step up. But yeah, small room, little basin, bunk beds. There you go.
That's still so eerie about your dreams.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
So the next horror story we ever read, we're going to start questioning why you wrote it even more.
Oh, I've got one in mind. You'll be hearing from me again, and you'll be asking me about that one too.
You write good stuff, brother.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
But I mean, that is the thing, I think a lot of writers, we write ultimately what we know, and so in this situation, a lot because you have been in that thing where now you're like, man, I feel like I was alive during that time. So, I mean, you are writing what you know, and that's the freakiest part about it.
Yeah, that is really scary.
Yeah.
Man. So, Jason, we haven't really asked you too many questions yet.
That's all right. I don't do much around here.
We gotta put you to work, buddy. When you're creating sort of like a historical fiction episode like this, how do you get into that mindset of what you want to create? I know the story obviously helps, but to kind of get into that mindset of what sound effects you might use from a different time, is there anything you kind of need to do to sort of do that research or kind of get that find the sounds you want?
Yeah. Well, again, the story in the story, it kind of gave you little bullet points in there of what to look for. I mean, the second I realized it's a Titanic, I was like, oh, 1912. All right. So I just jumped on YouTube and I just did some quick reading, and I watched a couple of videos and some things, and just got a general idea of the environment. Like, cars were around, but still most people used horse and carriage, and most of the roads are cobblestone, and the ladies wore dresses, the guys wore suits, everybody had some hat. For some reason, everybody had a hat on. And then it's just and then, so being, again, that's the Titanic, then I just went and I watched a couple of Titanic like fan-made films, or just like parts about the Titanic, and just documentaries about how a ship would sound when you're inside of it, and all that other stuff. And I have seen James Cameron's Titanic. So the part when the ship starts breaking apart, all the ambient sound effects that are in that scene are from my recollection of the movie itself. So pretty much all it is just the story is written out in such a way that it is literally kind of drawing the scenes for me as I do them.
Nice.
Yeah, and I gotta say, you did such an amazing, mind-blowing job on the iceberg impact, which there are so many documented reflections on that from passengers from different parts of the ship. I mean, some it was like a thunderous boom, knocked them out of bed. Other people just barely felt the vibration. Some just a distant hum. But considering where they were on the deck at that point, and when it reaches that point where she says that she felt that everything was becoming manifest, and then there's that low rumble vibration, and then you could hear the metal scraping along the side. Jason, that was par excellence. That was beautiful, perfect, and it gives me shivers just remembering it.
Ah, appreciate that, man. Yeah, I knew that when I was doing the iceberg part, to make it sound real, you need to remember that the ship was metal.
Mhm.
Icebergs aren't just going to hit the ship and then the iceberg's not going to fall apart. The other way around. And yeah, it's again a James Cameron movie, and just kind of my idea of what I think it should sound like. So thanks. I'm glad that you enjoyed it.
Oh yeah.
Did you like the little squishes and tears mildly in there for when he was getting slowly food processed?
I was thinking about that too, and I know with the description of how he was being bent, sort of, and being pried off the ship by the iceberg. I'm like, okay, this is going to be where Jason really lets the horror out of the bag. It's like, I mean, with the groaning and the screams and it was horrifically beautiful.
Good. I'm glad you like it, man. Jennifer, just so you know, I've been told a few times that I like to make things a little too squishy, and so I apologize.
I can't wait to hear it now.
Well, they're very subtle. You'll have to listen because, I mean, with the impact of the iceberg in the side of the ship, I figured that sounds probably a bit much to almost drown out, the fleshy sounds of, somebody being basically torn to pieces by an iceberg and a ship. But you can still hear them. I have them in the background. There's a couple breaking bones and stuff. It's pretty neat.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I enjoyed that part. No,
it's very disturbing.
And I think he's screaming too during it, isn't he? He's like,
no, I wouldn't say it's screaming. More so, it's kind of like, because he's getting
drawn and quartered. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, let's see. Note to self: Grey Rooms, Hindenburg. Okay, we'll see what you do with that.
Awesome. But that would be a short one. Like I think I would have to really draw out the rumbling fire sound, and I guess I could probably get a high def recorder and just get some Foley of me cooking a steak or something.
Gotta go out with a bang.
Right.
So yeah,
man. I just have to say too, though, that listening to it not only does it kind of bring you back into a time, because we actually have had those historical fictions before with the Grey Rooms. We did the Great War, season 1. I think that one of the things that I wanted to do for season 3, I was asking people to write more, do different kinds of genres and stuff and mix horror with it, so that not everything sound like we just basically interviewed somebody talking about the murder mysteries every weekend. So I wanted to kind of get that. So I'm really glad that you did do that sort of like alternate history side of that. That was fantastic, and it's something I hope to see more. I hope we can get some of those. I hope we can get more like maybe dark fantasy, horror, and just different kind of genres. I like to really incorporate more of those as we move on. So thank you for doing that, because I felt risky doing World War One. Did you feel like it might be a risk to write a story about the Titanic in a horror sense?
Well, I had a couple of stories in mind when I knew I wanted to submit to the Grey Rooms, the Titanic one. I could not say no to, though. But I was, as I was thinking of the story and plotting it out, I'm like, this is a really horrific situation. And I think the horror of the attempted murder of the wife and the ghost reaching out to try to save her, but she thinks is trying to kill her, was very gray roomsian, if I could make up a word. And I thought you guys would like it. I was thrilled.
I appreciate that. That's pretty nice. I'm a gray roomsian.
And I gotta say, while we're on that, my wife had never heard the show. She had just started getting into podcasts, mostly like true crime stuff and whatever. And I played her this episode, and she is now a Grey Rooms fan. She has gone through and started listening from season 1. Yeah.
Nice.
We appreciate that, and we really enjoy making this. And it's not necessarily or at least for me, I enjoy the audio aspect, but I more so enjoy getting to work with the talent that is coming in. That's the rewarding thing to me, the exceptional voice actors and actresses, and then the authors with their just imaginations pouring out on paper. That's the real fun stuff, just watching it all kind of gel together. And this is what we get from it. It's real neat.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. Everything is different, and so it just keeps it fresh. We need.
Which, by the way, Jennifer, since I know you haven't listened yet, the Cliff's Notes versions of what the Grey Rooms is about is, I'm pretty sure Graham may have said something, but it's kind of like God, we used to say Tales from the Crypt, but we'd say
Tales
maybe
from the Crypt meets Game of Thrones. Yeah, Tales from the Crypt meets Quantum Leap.
Quantum Leap, or
yeah. That's what it was.
Awesome. I can't wait.
Yeah. So basically, there is a female who is trapped in the Grey Rooms, and she's actually it's you that is doing that character, but she is actually inside your mind, living and experiencing all the horrible things that you are. So in the next episode, she actually reacts from all those things that happen to you.
Wow.
And so and we kind of review it. So it's actually interesting. Everybody who, like the main character and also the author too, they always kind of have an impact in the beginning of the next episode, because it kind of is the depiction of how our main Grey Rooms character is dealing with having to have experienced that story.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's like Groundhog Day, but really bad.
It's a great concept.
It's so fun to be part of it.
Thank you. It was a really screwed up dream I had in college.
See, it's all about dreams today.
Dreams, that's right.
Real quick, I did want to ask you, Jen, before we wrap things up here, do you remember what you wanted to do for the old man character? Because this is totally a time to be that character if you want.
No, I don't have it in front of me either.
So that's okay.
I have a feeling that would really bomb. But I did really, I did have an idea of that, the husky husband, darling. He was.
Oh, he went on Hannibal Lecter right there.
Yeah. Darling, come out. I can't remember the lines right now, so I can't really attack it. But I just thought, darling. Yeah. Okay, sorry, that was disappointing.
Michael's like, I like that. Just record that.
Yeah.
Well, we did. Yeah, so.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
Now, again, it's an absolute treat. Again, if you are listening to this and you have not listened to that story, for one, I need to ask you why. That's that's like reading the back of the book, before you start it. It's like, but give it a solid listen. If you have listened, listen again and really pay attention to Jennifer's voice acting. I mean it wholeheartely when I say that when I received the rough version, the raw version, so to speak, of the audio file, I was very pleased with the delivery. So it's an absolute treat. The story's great. The voice, the narration is just wonderful. This was so far one of my favorite ones to work on. I really enjoyed creating.
Oh, you are so kind. I'm gonna run off and go to it right now. So
yeah. You should get your kids to listen to it too.
No, give them nightmares. But I have to lob this right back at Michael Rigg to say what a great story you wrote. It was really so fun to be involved with. And it was such good writing, and it operated on so many different levels and so many different levels of reality. I just thought it was great.
Oh, thank you so much. I really
And
appreciate that.
also, we can't forget too, one of the unsung heroes in every episode. The audio, the composition musically was by J.M. Scherf. So
Yes.
he is phenomenal, and he always needs accolades, 5 stars, high fives, and credits all around. JM really takes every story and he just turns it up to 12. And that's what he did in this one. I think the soundtrack in this one right now was really, I think this one really grabbed the essence of the story and just really expanded the world and made it 3-dimensional. It just made you there, a part of it. So we got to always make sure we give appreciation to James.
Absolutely. It was so perfect. And when I was listening to it the first time, I closed my eyes, and as soon as that first swell of music starts, before Jennifer even starts speaking, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. And the way he captured the suspense and everything, I absolutely love it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
James
It was
a true
beautiful.
talent.
His music for these episodes, and this one too, especially, had the right pitches of sadness, the right pitches of horror, the feeling of dread as you know what's happening to the ship, and you hear that musicals, just the score change every single time. It's so powerful.
Yeah, so we always got to make sure we remember JM, the silent soldier, who's fighting a good fight with us. And so Mike, Mr. Rigg without the S, thank you ever so much for your story, and I look forward to what you do, everything else you're going to do, because you're talented, and I greatly appreciate it, and I'm excited for the next chapter. And Jennifer, I do hope that we have the opportunity to possibly work with you again in the future. Your skill level and professionalism, and just your attitude, everything.
Oh, you're so kind. I'd love to do it again. And thanks for having me on this too. This is really fun to talk with you guys.
Yes, ma'am. And hopefully everything gets done fast for you there too.
Oh, thank you.
We'll have some bubbly for you on Wednesday.
Oh, please do. Please do.
Yes, ma'am.
Jason, thanks for being here as always.
And Brian, I like you too, man. Whatever.
Yeah. I was actually very impressed. Jason was the first one in the room. That never happened. So thank you, Jason.
Yeah, I was sitting here. So,
guys, thank you so much again for doing this, giving us a chance to kind of learn a little bit about you and your storytelling and your acting and all those wonderful things, qualities that you have. You guys just made this a wonderful episode. So thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Entirely my pleasure. Thanks so much.
thank you.
Thank you. You guys have a good night.
Join us each week after every episode for another edition of Behind